Hi everyone, thank you. My name is Emanuel Sferios. I'm a drug educator and harm reduction advocate. My career began in the mid-90s as a volunteer needle exchange worker, and a few years later I followed the example of the Dutch government, who offered a new type of harm reduction, which was drug checking services for ecstasy users, because at the time and still today the greatest danger of taking MDMA is that you're going to get something that's far more dangerous. When PMA, paramethoxyamphetamine, appears, we see waves of deaths. So I founded DanceSafe, and you heard from the executive director today. I haven't worked with them for many years, but now I'm back involved in drug policy reform, working with Dee Goldsmith, whose daughter died after taking MDMA in DC, and she wants to amend the Rave Act. I wanted to talk a little bit about messaging, because I really appreciate the harm reduction efforts that the Pomona Police put in this time. To really understand harm reduction, you have to go back to the AIDS epidemic that began in the late 80s. And the birth of what we now refer to as social marketing. Social marketing is like regular marketing, except instead of trying to get a consumer to buy your product, you're trying to change the behaviors of large populations. And so instead of just saying, you could die if you have sex, or even use a condom because you could catch AIDS, the forward thinkers at that time made safe sex interesting and cool. It was, yay, condoms are cool. And that was the intention, and remains the intention behind drug harm reduction also. You have to know the culture you're dealing with, and you have to speak to them. That's also why peer education works the best when it comes to educating people. This is not compatible with a zero-tolerance approach, a Nancy Reagan just-say-no model. And I know it's really difficult, especially for law enforcement, but for most of us, to say anything that appears like we are condoning drug use. But really, we shouldn't worry too much about that. There is appropriate language that you can use when putting out harm reduction messaging, language that acknowledges the reasons young people choose to use certain drugs. If we don't acknowledge the benefits that young people claim they're getting, they're never going to listen to us about the risks. So while this is a great effort, there's a lot of inaccuracies, and I think the back half is awesome. The front half on the right side lists short-term and long-term effects of MDMA, most of which are completely wrong. Only a few in there are actually accurate, and there's nothing listed there at all about, the positive effects of using MDMA, the real reasons that people take it. And so, having counseled thousands of young people over 2 decades, if they read this, they're going to laugh, and you're going to lose credibility. So we got to get over this hump in messaging and say, well, okay, yes, it makes you feel good, it produces empathy, it's non-addictive. One of the confusions that's happening right now, even among users themselves, is that the market has been flooded with bath salts. Cathinone class drugs. The cathinone drugs are more like traditional stimulants. They're like cocaine or meth. You snort it, redose it throughout the night, use it day after day. Young people are being sold this under the name of ecstasy or Molly, and they don't even know they're not getting MDMA. So the reason we're seeing, and realize, the number of fatalities has dramatically increased since the late 90s when I started DanceSafe. Back then, there were 3 to 5 deaths a year, and almost all of them were when a wave of paramethoxyamphetamine came through. They were adulterants. Nowadays, we're seeing more deaths related to pure MDMA. And the reason why is not that MDMA itself is so highly toxic. It's that young people are confusing it with methadone and other cathinones. And their friends are telling them, oh, this is how much you're supposed to take, and you can snort it and all this, and they're taking massive doses because the education isn't there. A harm reduction document that explains the true differences between bath salts and MDMA, letting young people know they need to be careful how much they take. They might be used to taking 300, 500 milligrams throughout the night, but they're probably getting methadone, not MDMA. If you do that with MDMA, you're seriously putting yourself at risk for hypothermia. So we need, you know, drill down, get to the truth, respect the intelligence of young people, and not be afraid to say, hey, look, not all drugs are the same. There are benefits to some drugs. We get that, but use moderately, use less, be safe, be intelligent, be smart. This is the kind of messaging that's going to work. So, and there are solutions to this. If we do that, this has been done all throughout Europe, where they never had Nancy Reagan using the Just Say No model. And the number of fatalities in the Netherlands is one of the lowest in Europe, despite having the highest per capita use of MDMA in all of Europe. In Portugal, where they decriminalized drugs and just therefore opened the door to more honest, open conversations, they've actually seen a reduction in drug use, and particularly in the harder drugs, lower overdoses, fewer overdoses, etc. I know we can't change federal drug laws here, but we can, as a local community, prioritize a certain approach, different enforcement models, send a message to DC. We want to do things differently. I know cities have done that with marijuana.
Comments, so
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Wesley, can we just